Welcome to all of you jewelry and metal loving people out there. My name is Janine Folino. I'm an independent curator. I was a former curator at the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston. And I'm delighted today to introduce to you our lecturer, Elyse Karlin. I'm sure Elyse is pretty well known to you, especially if you are a member of ASRA, which is the Association for the Study of Jewelry and Related Arts. She, with Yvonne Markowitz, who's the Rita J. Kaplan and Susan B. Kaplan Curator of Jewelry Emerita at the MFA in Boston, are the head of this wonderful organization. And for those of you who are members, that's wonderful. For those of you who are not, you are more than welcome to join us, and we hope you'll actually become members yourselves. Elyse is also the publisher of Adornment magazine, and she has written several wonderful books on jewelry. And so today we're going to have a lecture from Elyse, and she is going to be talking to us about the New York metalsmith Michael Galmer, who produces silver in an unusual fashion for most metalsmiths. He does his work primarily through electroforming, but I'll leave that to Elyse to tell you all the details. His work is quite fascinating, and he has had quite a marvelous career. His sculptural work is becoming better known, and I think Elyse will share all of that wonderful material with you. So congratulations for being here. I'm congratulating myself for having made it onto Zoom, and I hope you all enjoy the lecture.
Janine, thank you. Hello, everyone. Thank you for being with us today for ASTRA's first online lecture. Just a few things before we start. We have turned off the chat feature because we want you to just sit back and enjoy and not have to do anything. Also, at the end of the lecture, some of you may have questions. Michael Galmer was not able to be with us online today, and he can answer your questions better than I can. So I'll provide you with an email to send your questions to me at the end of the lecture, and Michael has graciously agreed to answer them. We will send all the questions and all the answers to everyone who has signed up for the lecture within a day or so. So now let's begin. Okay, so the name of this lecture is Seen in Silver, The Amazing World of Michael Galmer, because to me it is quite amazing what he can do in silver. Michael Galmer came to the United States in 1981 with a degree in engineering that he earned in his native Russia. Yet, after emigrating to this country with his wife Galina and their young daughter to start a new life, he chose to pursue a career inspired by his love of art. He's an artist and a jeweler who works in silver to create personal adornments, tableware, and other objects, and he also excels as a sculptor in the unusual medium of silver. Founding Galmer Silver in Long Island City, New York, when he came to the United States, he initially worked in his garage, where he began perfecting his skills and inventing creative and unique alternatives to traditional silver making. Michael's vision of a career that would combine his artistic passion for nature with his sense of design, technical expertise, and ingenuity quickly came to fruition. So I want to talk a little bit about his process. Self-taught as a metals artist, Michael primarily works in the ancient art of repoussé, which means pushing from the back of a piece to create jewelry and objects. Although his chosen technique is a traditional one, his method of execution is unusual. I'll talk a little bit more about this in detail in a few minutes. So to explain what repoussé is to those who are not familiar with it, this seemed a fitting introduction to me for an artist who chose to come to this country. This is probably the largest work of repoussé any of us will ever see. The Statue of Liberty is the largest known sculpture created with the repoussé technique. The statue was formed by copper repoussé created in sections, and many of you may know the sections were sent here and reassembled. And it was done using wooden structures to shape each piece during the hammering process. Traditional repoussé work has many steps and is a slow process. First, the metal must be annealed or heated to make it malleable as possible. The metal must then be fixed on a suitable support as above. Commonly used technique is to place the metal over a layer of pitch, which is a kind of adhesive, which holds it in place while it's being worked on. The desired design is then lightly chased on the piece with a special tool called a liner that creates narrow raised lines on the other side of the metal. The metal is then turned over with the back side up, and the main repoussé work is then performed, pushing out from the back, using a variety of tools known as punches. Once the main repoussé work is complete, the piece is again released by heating, and the cavities on the back are filled with melted pitch. Once that filling has hardened, the design is then refined by chasing on the front. Rather than hammer a piece from the back, as is typical in repoussé work, as I just described, Michael uses a combined method of casting and chasing to create the same effect. Casting is the process by which a wax pattern is made into a mold to create jewelry or an object, and then is filled with molten metal or silver to create a custom piece. Michael finishes his pieces with chasing and also engraving. Chasing is the method of pushing the metal to create a design. You don't remove it, you just push it into place. And engraving is digging into the metal. The chasing and casting process to create a repoussé piece is one that Michael pioneered. The result has all the details and beauty of a piece made by the traditional repoussé technique. So now I'd like to take you through the steps on one piece to give you an idea of what he does. These are the steps he takes for all work, whether it's tabletop or jewelry. The piece that I'm discussing right now is called the large bee vase. Michael begins the project by sketching out design ideas, and here's some rough sketches. More often than not, his designs are influenced by nature. The next step is a detailed rendering of the object to be made once it's completed. So I think these renderings, which looks like a finished piece, but it's just a drawing, is a work of art in itself. Next, the molds are created. The first step to creating a mold is to make a model. Michael does this with a liquid plastic, which he says is a very good material to work with because it's easy to hand engrave the details of a piece into it. When the model is completed, he makes a silicone rubber mold, which you're seeing here, and it has supporting shelves. In the center, you can see the mold cut into two pieces. With a brush, Michael applies melted wax to both sides of the mold in the thickness he desires. When the wax is hardened, he removes the wax from the mold, and he now has a wax mold. Then he begins the lost wax method of casting, which means pouring the molten silver into the wax mold. It's called lost wax casting because the wax is always lost during the process of making a piece. In addition to lost wax casting, depending on the complexity of the project, Michael will also use, as I previously mentioned, chasing and engraving, but also at times stamping, etching, electroforming, and spinning. And here's a picture of Michael doing the chasing once the basic piece has been completed. In this case, since the design has been cast into the object, chasing and engraving are used to refine the design rather than to create it. And here's what the finished piece looks like. The bee vase has amber stones and blue power shell set into it and gold plating on the interior, which is a hallmark of Michael's pieces that gives it a more opulent appearance. The first area of Michael's work that I'd like to discuss today are historical replicas and pieces that he was commissioned by the U.S. Navy to create. Many important commissions related to historical objects have come Michael's way, in part because of this method that he has created. Here we see him when the punch bowl for the USS Oklahoma was recreated. He was commissioned by the Oklahoma Historical Society to recreate this punch bowl that belonged to the battleship Oklahoma. His replica is now on view in the governor's mansion. And on the left, the picture you're seeing are two different sides of the bowl with images of two important Oklahomans who are on the bowl. The original bowl had begun to deteriorate from being used frequently at official state events. It was welded together from independently molded pieces and has several decorative attachments. Using his own silversmithing process, Michael was able to recreate the 24-inch diameter bowl in a single mold. The original punch bowl was commissioned by the Oklahoma legislature in 1913 at a cost of $7,500 and was given to the battleship Oklahoma. In today's money, that would be about $190,000. So it's quite a bit of money for a punch bowl. Today, it's on display at the Oklahoma Historical Society Museum in Oklahoma and is no longer in use. So the original bowl is at the Historical Society. The replica is at the State House. The replica, detailed down to the scratches that were on the original, was produced in 8 months by Michael. It has a 24-karat gold-plated interior, and it features a portrait bust of Sequoia, a Native American polymath of the Cherokee Nation, who I discovered by coincidence also happened to be a silversmith. I don't even know if Michael knows that. This is a lithograph after a portrait of Sequoia painted by Charles Bird King in 1828. The original painting was burned in a fire at the Smithsonian Institution in 1865. As he grew older and came into contact with white men, Sequoia learned how to make jewelry from them. He became a noted silversmith, creating various items from the silver coins that trappers and traders carried with them. He never signed his pieces, so there's none that can be positively identified as his work. He was also a blacksmith, and his spurs and bridle bits were in great demand because he liked to decorate them with silver. But more importantly is what he invented. Sequoia thought that the white man's power came from special papers, or he called them leaves. He would see them hold these pieces of paper, and then magically other people would know what this person was thinking. He eventually came to realize it was because they could communicate long distances through writing and by reading newspapers and letters. It wasn't magic. In 1821, he completed the creation of a Cherokee alphabet, making reading and writing in Cherokee possible. It's actually not a true alphabet. It's combinations of sounds represented by 86 symbols. With the creation of this alphabet, the Cherokee Nation became literate, and the magic was bestowed on them as well. In the 21st century, Sequoia's Cherokee syllabary remains in use, and it's visible on street signs and buildings across the Cherokee Nation, which is located in northeast Oklahoma. Cherokee is the co-official language alongside English. In addition, this alphabet is taught to students of all ages in schools and universities in Oklahoma and North Carolina. He was ridiculed by his fellow Cherokee in the beginning, but he became honored as most Cherokees learned how to write and read with his system. And there was a medal struck in his honor, and I assume that is the medal he's wearing around his neck. And I don't know that that exists anymore. He was not originally from Oklahoma, but he lived there from 1829 to 1844. The other side of the bowl, you saw another figurehead, is a depiction of Captain David L. Payne. He was the leader of what was known as the Boomer Movement, which led to the settlement of Oklahoma's so-called unassigned lands. What that meant was it was land that was actually in Native American territory, but had not been assigned to any particular tribe. The bowl is also decorated with reliefs of the state seal, mistletoe stems, and wheat stalks. This is the USS Oklahoma. It was a battleship built for the United States Navy in 1910, and it was notable for being the first to have oil-burning power rather than coal. Commissioned in 1916, the Oklahoma served in World War I, protecting Allied convoys on their way across the Atlantic. After the war, the ship was modernized between 1927 and 29, and in 1936, the ship rescued American citizens and refugees from the Spanish Civil War. On returning to the West Coast in August of the same year, the Oklahoma spent the rest of her service in the Pacific. On December 7, 1941, the Oklahoma was sunk by several torpedoes, during the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor. Torpedoes from torpedo bomber airplanes hit the Oklahoma's hull and the ship capsized. A total of 429 crew died. Survivors jumped off the ship 50 feet into burning hot water or crawled across mooring lines that connected the Oklahoma and the USS Maryland, which was only lightly damaged in the attack. Some sailors who were inside escaped when rescuers drilled holes and opened hatches to rescue them. In 1943, the Oklahoma was righted and salvaged. Unlike most of the other battleships that were recovered during Pearl Harbor, the Oklahoma was too damaged to return to duty. Her wreck was eventually stripped of her remaining armament and the superstructure as well, before being sold for scrap in 1946. The remaining hulk sank in a storm in 1947 while being towed from Oahu, Hawaii to a scrapyard in San Francisco Bay. Therefore, this punch bowl is not only a replica of the original bowl, it's also a commemoration of the sailors who lost their lives in Pearl Harbor. The original punch bowl was in storage at the Puget Sound Naval Shipyard at the time of the Japanese attack, and that's why it survived. In 1946, the Navy returned the punch bowl to the state of Oklahoma. Michael's patriotism for his adopted country would not allow him to accept a fee for the creation of this beautiful punch bowl, and he accepted as payment only the cost of silver. And this is what it looked like at Pearl Harbor when it was attacked. Michael also executed a large commemorative silver plate or tray, whatever you'd like to call it, which was presented at the launch ceremony of the USS Wayne E. Meyer in 2009. The USS Wayne Meyer is a Navy-guided missile destroyer. The ship is named after Rear Admiral Wayne E. Meyer, known as the father of Aegis, the type of missile system it carries. The ship was christened by Anna Mae Meyer, wife of Admiral Meyer, in 2008, and after sea trials, she was commissioned on the Delaware River in Philadelphia on October 10, 2009. Michael was more recently asked to create this beautiful repoussé plate to commemorate the commissioning of the USS Delaware. The U.S. Navy commissioned the USS Delaware, an 18th Virginia-class attack submarine. They have all these complicated names and categories, on April 4th of this year. Although the traditional public commissioning ceremony was canceled due to public safety and restrictions of large public gatherings, the Navy commissioned USS Delaware administratively and transitioned the ship to normal operations. The Navy does hope to have a commemoration event at some future date. The ship's sponsor is Jill Biden, wife of Joe Biden. This is the first time in nearly 100 years that the name Delaware has been used for a U.S. Navy vessel. It's the 7th U.S. Navy ship and its first submarine to bear the name of the state of Delaware. As a nuclear submarine, it will operate for over 30 years without ever refueling. The Delaware is the first U.S. ship commissioned while it was underwater. The Delaware's crew replicated commissioning ceremony traditions that could be accomplished beneath the surface, including bringing the ship to life, sounding the klaxon, and firing water slugs through the Delaware's torpedo tubes. Michael is perhaps best known for working on the scaled replicas of the 19th century woodlawn vase created by Tiffany and Company in 1861. It is given annually to the owner of the winner of the Preakness Stakes, a horse race at the Pimlico Racetrack in Baltimore. The Preakness is the second race, or what's often referred to as one of the jewels of the Triple Crown. It's normally held 2 weeks after the Kentucky Derby and 3 weeks before the Belmont Stakes. The winner is presented with the ceremonial award, one of the most famous trophies in American sports, but they are not allowed to take it home. They receive a similar version of it to keep, which is a treasure in and of itself. And here you can see how happy they look to have this awarded to them, even if they can't take it home. The woodlawn vase was a commission executed by Tiffany and Company for R. Atchison Alexander, who acquired it for the Woodlawn Racecourse near Louisville, Kentucky. It passed through various hands until 1917, when it became known as the permanent trophy for the winner of the Preakness Stakes. It's 36 inches tall and contains 400 ounces of solid sterling silver, weighing approximately 30 pounds. It was described by the local paper in Louisville when it arrived there in the 1860s as the most elegant of its kind ever made anywhere in the world. At that time, it was valued at $1,500. For many years, the trophy was actually given to the winning owner to keep for 1 year until the next running of the Preakness. In 1953, Native Dancer won, and the wife of the winning owner, Alfred Gwynn Vanderbilt Jr., declined to take possession of the trophy because of its monetary and sentimental value to the sport. From then on, the winner was no longer allowed to keep it. The original trophy is now currently valued at $4 million. The original trophy is kept at the Baltimore Museum of Art, where it's on permanent view in a room that is considered to have one of the finest collections of British sporting artwork in America. Or, as I heard someone say recently, because I live near Baltimore, the room with all the horse pictures in it. The Woodlawn vase is brought to the race each year by Maryland National Guardsmen wearing white gloves for the winner's presentation ceremony. And I did actually see this huge piece in the museum in place, and it's quite impressive. In 1954, the tradition began of giving the winner a 1/3 scale replica of the Woodlawn trophy to keep permanently. Made of sterling silver, the reproduction of the trophy is valued at about $40,000. It's 14 inches tall and made with 12 pounds of silver. The job of turning that 12 pounds of silver into the foot-tall trophy fell to Jim Steef, whose family began making silverware and decorative pieces in Baltimore in 1892. The Steef name became known in both the sports world because they made trophies for tennis, horse racing, and yachting, as well as for high society for the work they did for the White House and Colonial Williamsburg. Despite the fact that the company was sold more than once to larger corporations before going out of business, Jim Steef held onto the molds used to make the Woodlawn replica. They had belonged to the Schofield Company when the Steef Company had purchased the firm. When he started his own business, Jim Steef, a descendant of the Steef family, took the molds which he had in possession to Michael. Michael devised a new set of molds to take advantage of his proprietary casting process that creates a better replica. Has a lot of parts, Michael says, 14 large parts and 36 little parts, sort of like a Christmas tree and ornaments. Soldering the replica takes time and patience. He says when it's small, it's always complicated. You need to use a magnifying glass to work, or you can make it ugly. Any small mistake on the nose or the ear is not good. It's not easy.
We have a lot of parts for this project to assembly, finish them, and we're using a lot of techniques to make it possible to finish this beautiful object of art. And we're using a lot of technologies, maybe chasing, casting, electroforming, negative electroforming, and etching also. So we have so many parts, it has to be done each part separately, and after that you have to assemble all this very carefully. You can check this beautiful piece at the end of it. We're gonna to assemble this goes on the top, the horse is sitting on the top this way, and the angels is gonna to be attached on this four side. We have 1, 2, 3, and 4. We have 4 angels for that, and we have horses, even a small one, and that's it. It's very exciting and very interesting work. When I'm finishing the big project, I'm so excited that I'm ready for relax.
Besides depictions of horses and riding accoutrements, there are 4 figures of victory, each holding a wreath in either hand. 7 inches above the bowl is a circular ornament, 9 inches in diameter, and on it is engraved the portraits of the 8 officers of the Woodlawn Race Course Association. After the 50 pieces are created, they must be assembled and buffed and polished. 3 months after he starts, Michael calls Jim Steve to make the delivery to Pimlico. He carries it off like he's a member of the KGB or CIA, says Michael, laughing. After the race is over, Steve delivers the Woodlawn replica to a shop in Owings Mills, Maryland, very close to where I live. There, the winning owner's name and the horse's name are engraved in the polished finish. These days, there are often multiple owners of a single horse. You know, there are syndicates that are backing horses now. So how does that work? Well, sometimes they take turns displaying it, but other times the owners ask Preakness officials to order an extra version, which is about $8,000 worth of silver alone. And there is one other object that Steve and Michael also make related to the Preakness, and that's the Jockey's Cup. At one time, the winning jockeys of the Preakness received Paul Revere bowls, which didn't really relate to the trophy. More recently, the base of the Woodlawn vase was made into a 1/2 size replica loving cup. So it relates to the Preakness and also is part of the history of the vase. The Preakness this year was scheduled for May 16th, but it's been postponed until October 3rd. Rather than teeming with horses and jockeys as spring arrived, Pimlico Race Course is currently serving as a coronavirus testing site for those who live in Northwest Baltimore. The next area I would like to speak about are the silver objects and tableware that Michael creates. These are pictures of early 20th century repoussé work by famous companies such as Tiffany, Gorham, and Schiebler. Much of Michael's repoussé tableware would be very hard to distinguish from these fine examples and others. Here's his pitcher, which is the rose pitcher. It's just beautiful, beautiful work. Here's a repoussé candlestick. I'll give you a minute to look at it. And he does some whimsical pieces as well. This is in a vintage kind of style, a bear cocktail shaker and a moose flask. And this mint julep cup with horses on it continues the racing theme and would be perfect to have your mint julep while you're watching the Kentucky Derby. This piece is one of my favorites. It's an Art Nouveau style mirror with the iris showing Japanese influence, a hallmark of Art Nouveau design at the turn of the 20th century. Michael also creates a number of goblets and this beautiful wedding cup on the right. But not all of Michael's work has a vintage style. This important tea set is decidedly modern. The Taste of Lemon collection was inspired by the Southern tradition of serving iced tea in elegant silver. The set features golden lemons for handles and silver ice spilling over the edges. It's comprised of a lemon tray, pitcher, tumblers, and even matching lemon napkin rings. Made of silver, it also has 24-karat gold plating as well. The set was made in 2006 and is on permanent view at the Renwick Gallery, Smithsonian American Art Museum in Washington. He also creates small objects with intricate designs, like the little beehive trinket box, which you could also put caviar in, and this artistic spider set with cabochon garnet, which can hold my napkin anytime. Michael has also done work for many important silversmith companies. Here are examples of vases that he designed for Tiffany & Company based on ceramic work by Louis Comfort Tiffany. And of course, most of us are most interested in jewelry. And in addition to his repoussé work creating useful and beautiful objects, Michael has created a large body of jewelry, including rings, bracelets, earrings, and necklaces. He sketches designs from nature to replicate the motifs of chrysanthemum, palm tree, bamboo, and peony in sterling silver and 24-karat plated gold to create original pieces of jewelry. New pieces are always being added to the collection. This is just a small number of them. He uses a variety of gemstones, both precious and semi-precious, in his objects and jewelry. These include diamond, ruby, sapphire, pink tourmaline, pearl, amber, amethyst, carnelian, garnet, blue topaz, moonstone, and blue paua shell, which is in the abalone family. These cuff bracelets are the wild iris, the vineyard cuff, the cherry blossom cuff, and what am I missing here? The magnolia, I think. Yeah, I guess it's chrysanthemum the bottom. I'm missing one, but he has many different flowers and many different designs. And this is the bamboo necklace and bracelet. Here we have chrysanthemum earrings, which are quite beautiful, and a matching chrysanthemum necklace. And I love the asymmetry of it. One of my favorite things that he creates are these evening bags. They are sterling silver with gold-plated interiors. The bottom bag, the chrysanthemum purse, is in the permanent collection of the Cooper Hewitt Smithsonian Design Museum. And I don't know how well you can see it, but on the top to the right, he's created like a silver mesh to hold the bag together when it opens. Normally you would see some kind of fabric there, but everything is made of metal. The last area of Michael's work that I'd like to talk about is his sculpture, which is quite different than his other work. It's perhaps as a sculptor in the unusual medium of silver that Michael is most expressive. He's a very spiritual person. You know that as soon as you talk to him. While some of his work is influenced by his Jewish heritage, the work is not meant to be religious. It is clear his sculptures put him in touch with this aspect of his nature, but his goal is to offer a message to everyone, regardless of their religious affiliation or even the lack of one. The perfect example of this is seen in this 10 Commandments sculpture. It's 5.5 feet tall and wrought in sterling silver. It was described this way by the Evergreen Museum of Johns Hopkins University, where it was on view several years ago. The organic quality of the base derives from Michael's lifelong fascination with nature, with the root-inspiring texturing representing the world, raw and without rules. From it rises a civilized society of many, all of whom are partnered in embracing a new world. The sculpture starts as a chaotic snarl of bronze at its root, and sitting upon this is the entire city of Jerusalem, depicted in amazing detail in silver. The artist says that the city represents the 10 Commandments that provided strength and order. From the center of the silver city rise 10 branches holding candles that reach to the sky. They celebrate the positive influence the 10 Commandments has had on world civilizations, with the candles illuminating the way. Although many Judaic collectors have wished to purchase the 10 Commandments sculpture, Michael retained ownership of it due to a desire to share it with others, rather than have it coveted by one person. It has been shown at the Long Island Museum in Stony Brook, New York. And here's a close-up of the base, so you can just see the amazing detail of the entire city of Jerusalem. This sculpture, which is rather huge, is known as the Tears of the Holocaust. Made in silver and bronze, what looks like stone there is actually bronze, which is really amazing. It reflects Michael's belief that the Holocaust was the ultimate test of the resiliency of the human spirit. In the center of the sculpture is a bronze stone, which I just talked about, which amazingly mimics natural stone and represents the difficult lives Jews have faced living in ghettos. A scarred but strong branch grows from the rock, symbolizing the extended family of Jewish communities who have overcome adversity. The small pond at the top of the stone leaks a silver tear to symbolize the suffering endured in the Holocaust. Yet new life in the form of the gold that you see at the bottom, branches with blooms, symbolizes hope. This sculpture was donated by Michael to the Holocaust Memorial and Tolerance Center in Glen Cove, New York.
What is the message message of the sculpture and how did you convey that?
My strong message is that human spirit prevails. In my sculpture, I introduce my pupil in a form of the tree. Tree is strong and a very complicated shape, which grows from under the huge stone. Stone is a hard life of Jewish people living in a foreign land without equal rights. Main point of my sculpture is a tear. Tear is a reaction on the insult and humiliation. Many tears create the lake in the stone, and from the stone flows the creeks, which reach the base and give life to new generation. As you can see, we have a lot of leaves that represents a lot of lives.
Michael's work has been exhibited and is in the permanent collection of a number of museums, including the Evergreen Museum in Baltimore, the Long Island Museum in Stony Brook, New York, the Biggs Museum of American Art in Dover, Delaware, the Cooper Hewitt, the Renwick Gallery, and the Newark Museum in New Jersey. He has also been commissioned by the Jewish Museum of New York to create a number of pieces for it. Most recently, his sculpture Lust for Life was unveiled at the Long Island Museum on April 11th, where it joins the museum's permanent collection. Lust for Life celebrates the human spirit. Just as we overcome great adversity in life, a plant grows from a crack in a stone, defying the odds for survival. Lust for Life is also sterling silver with 24-karat gold plating. This piece, Body from Egg, entered the permanent collection at the Biggs Museum of American Art in Dover last year. Also, again, sterling silver with gold plating. And this is Michael's latest sculpture, a life-size female body cast in silver. To the right, you see the wax model, and then you see the finished silver statue. The surface of the sculpture is like a web woven of chrysanthemums, and she's 5 feet 5 inches tall. It rises from the bronze tree bark and chrysanthemum roots sprouts in the silver. It's mounted on a black lacquered rotating base. This is a close-up of the body. This picture, with Michael standing next to it, gives you a sense of the scale of the sculpture. Michael describes his creation as a modern woman who was strong on the outside and inside. She shines, as does silver, with ideas. She is blooming with chrysanthemums, which represent her passion, goals, and desires, and also reflect her achievements and dreams. She is proud to stand tall and powerful, and she doesn't shy away from the limelight. She is who she is and has no regrets. I think from having met the Galmers, and this is Galina Galmer with Michael, that Galina more than likely was the inspiration for this beautiful sculpture. Galina is an artist in her own right who recently had a one-woman show in New York. She's been by Michael's side during his incredible journey to the United States, where his talent came into full bloom, and where they raised their children. I have no doubt they will have many more adventures in the art world yet to come.